Right, hello there, and welcome to beach volleyball coaches and players and whoever else is watching in our community. This is a recorded conversation with Rich Lambourne. My name is Louis Lett. This is being recorded for the International Beach Volleyball Coaches Association with the aim of sharing knowledge throughout our community. Rich Lambourne, a very successful indoor volleyball player, Olympic gold medalist actually, and World League gold medal to go with that, several individual medals as well as a libero, but now coaching beach volleyball at the moment for Taylor Crabb and Jake Gibb, aiming to lead those boys towards Tokyo whenever it may be. It seems to be that you're the perfect partner for this interview, Rich, as we talk about the similarities, differences between indoor volleyball, beach volleyball, coaching. So that's what we're going to talk about. Firstly, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that introduction. It makes me sound a lot more important in your accent for some reason, from an American perspective.
Today, we're all about coaching, and we're here to pick that brain of yours, which I reckon there's a fair bit of experience and knowledge and wisdom in there, Rich. So I'm excited to discuss some of the similarities, some of the philosophies, and also some of the differences between the two sports, and obviously your experience coming from indoor playing, winning the Olympic gold medal in Beijing, into beach volleyball. But first of all, I just wanted to start at the top, really open question. What would you say is your coaching philosophy? So indoor or beach volleyball aside, what would be the things that you really stick to?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I'm not so sure I've ever really thought about it in such specific terms, which is maybe an indictment of me as a coach. But I'm not so sure that how I work with Jake and Taylor would necessarily work for everyone else, because they're such experienced players and such knowledgeable players. I more so see myself as almost like the guardrails you put up when you go bowling. if you're really terrible at bowling, I see myself almost as sort of that. In case we veer off, I'm there to kind of nudge us back in the right direction. Like, that's sort of how I see my role. My background was in indoor volleyball, and so I don't come into beach volleyball coaching with this library of experience on how to do things as it pertains to the beach, and so I don't approach coaching the beach that way. I just see myself as more a guy who's looking to give a little bit of technical input here and there where it's necessary, and then just try and convey some sort of game management and mental aspects as best I can.
What would be your biggest challenge since you've sort of transferred from playing playing indoor volleyball into beach volleyball? Has there been one challenge in particular?
I tell people a lot that, when they ask about coaching, that it's similar to being a passenger in a Formula One car or something, right? Like you would lose your mind because you have no control. And so going around these hairpin turns so fast is crazy scary, right? Because you're not behind the wheel. And so I think of coaching similarly, because when you're a player, you react to situations differently, because ultimately you can sort of control the outcome to a certain extent. As a coach, you're just hands off the wheel and hoping it all works out. So that's a difficult adjustment. And also, I've worked with several different teams, and to varying degrees of success. And it's difficult when you feel like the message you're trying to convey to your players isn't landing as well as you would like. You sort of try and rack your brain as to why that is. How do you improve it? And, oftentimes, unfortunately, at least for me thus far, you don't always crack that code. And so that becomes very frustrating.
Do you find if you're struggling to crack the code, you have to try and find another way to try and convey the same message?
Absolutely. and that's the difficulty. That's the kind of ongoing learning process of being a coach, because, what exists in my head, isn't necessarily always right. No matter how much I tell myself and other people that it is, right? And if it's not landing with the intended recipient, then it does neither of us any good. If I can't figure out a way to help them understand what the point is, or help them internalize whatever we're trying to implement or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember being myself when I was coaching, or every day I was sat on a course. Somebody said, "Oh, if you have to say the same things 100 times to this person, who's the slow learner?" And that like stuck with me really heavy, even now. And yes, it's interesting to hear you. Yeah, hear you say that. I think that's something for all coaches. Is hey, I know this works. I know it's successful, but it's difficult to always get that across. In your time, indoor and beach volleyball that you've been around, do you find that the attributes are the same to be successful for a beach volleyballer and an indoor athlete as well?
If we're talking about a skill set, obviously there are a lot of differences between the indoor and the outdoor game, in that you have to be a lot more well-rounded outdoors, of course. But I think, mentally, professionally, the kind of hallmarks of success are pretty similar. And I think that not only goes between indoor and beach volleyball, but, more than likely throughout just about any given sport.
From a technical perspective, which sort of skills do you think translate really well from indoor to beach volleyball, whether it's arm swing, whether it's jumping mechanics, whether it's passing platforms, defense? Is there anything that you find works really well in both?
Yeah, with my background as a libero, obviously I pay a lot of attention to how my guys receive the ball, and serve, receive, and so forth. So we work on that, and I feel like the mechanics are pretty similar across both disciplines. One of the kind of foundational expressions that I learned coming up was that the ball knows angles, right? And so if I can create a good angle for the ball's going to do what I want it to do. And if I don't, it's not going to happen, obviously. And so the mechanics of making those good angles at a high level over time are pretty similar throughout both versions of the sport. Settings a little bit different, just because you have to be so much kind of cleaner in your contact on the beach, although that seems to be loosening a little bit, internationally at least.
I saw some fast hands from Sarah Sponsor as well, jump setting last week on the AVP too, like super quick out hands.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably an anomaly for her, because she's got a pretty deep dish, I would say, generally speaking. But yeah, I mean, just as far as like side setting and all the stuff you can get away with indoor, we're not quite there on the beach, so you got to be square to your target typically, and so that involves some different footwork and so forth. But yeah, since passing is kind of my background, serve, receive, and so forth, that's where I think the greatest similarity lies between the two. And there are arm swing things that you talk about that are very similar, and that applies to maybe serving as well. I think serving has a lot of the same technical components.
I just find that really, really interesting about the passing. Would you say sort of like positioning, stability, all that same sort of stuff, as well as angles, or you're teaching mostly angles?
Like, the way I explain it is like this. So we have that overarching concept that the ball knows angles. And to kind of say that another way, if I make a good angle, I'm going to get a good result. If I make a poor angle, I'm going to get a poor result. And then everything else we do is designed to get myself in position to make a good angle at a high level over a long period of time. because, I mean, realistically, I can throw a shoulder at the ball, and if it hits me at the right angle, I'm going to end up with a good result. But over time, that's not a good strategy for quality serve reception, right? Or defense or whatever. And so, we're talking about simplicity of movement, meaning, lessening the amount of variables in my movement. If I can take one step to get to a ball, that's better than taking, a step in a shuffle or two steps or whatever, because the fewer variables I have, the greater repeatability there is in my movement, right? And so the more effective I am at repeating that same movement the same way over time. So it's stuff like that, and I think that's why it is similar across the disciplines, because that concept of simplicity is very pertinent to both sports. You mentioned two great servers, Ivandro on the beach and Zaitsev indoor. Against both guys, I have very little time to make a reaction to what's coming at me, right? So the more simple my movements, the more likely I am to be able to throw up a good angle against the freight train that's coming off of each one of their shoulders at me, right?
Trains is a good way of putting it. Are both sports, this is one from Crystal actually, are both sports looking at the same sort of talent pool of players in the US? Are there player types that could only be successful in indoor and others that have a better chance in beach volleyball, for example?
Realistically, as a whole, our best volleyball athletes are not playing on the beach in the United States. And I would guess that that's fairly similar across the world. I mean, obviously, your top players are wonderful athletes, but if we look at the whole talent pool, most of our great volleyball players are still playing indoor, just because that's where the money exists. They can go make hundreds of thousands of dollars overseas for us doing that. And until that changes a little bit, I think it'll probably stay that way, if that makes sense. But the counterpoint to that is a guy like Taylor, who was the player of the year in our college system over here, is a wonderful indoor player, and he's out on the beach to the great delight of myself and many other beach volleyball fans.
Yes.
Tri Bourne had a good indoor career, but came out pretty early to the beach. But in our country, guys like Matt Anderson, we've got some of the other Hawaiians, Micah Christensen and Micah Ma'a, the Sander brothers. All these guys could potentially be great beach volleyball players, but they're amazing indoor volleyball players, and kind of that's where the money is for them currently.
Next up is like environments and cultures. What are the biggest differences for you, Rich, in terms of between indoor and beach volleyball, training, working, and creating, enabling success? So maybe looking at training blocks and timing and periodization, maybe.
So indoor, our season was so short because, everybody plays in Europe or wherever they're playing professionally, and then we would convene in, late April or early May or something, and you have these 4 months to compete. So there's very little buildup. You'd kind of land in Anaheim, California, where we trained, and almost immediately you're right into the World League or the VNL now. And then maybe you have a few weeks, and then you're into whatever the big international competition for the year is, whether it's the World Championships or the World Cup, whatever. So it becomes more of almost like a load management system for the indoor team. And there's certainly a lot of that on the beach side as well, but our periodization game becomes a lot more important because we have a longer off season. So what do we do at that time? When do we feel it's best to convene our preseason training block? And again, that's going to be based on when our first tournament is and sort of what our schedule looks like for the year. Where do we want to peak? Last year we had the World Championships. Obviously, that was someplace we were trying to be physically at our best because, I don't know. And we'll get into maybe the mental side of this in a second, but there needs to be this understanding in your mind that we're trying to create this periodization so that we're at our absolute best at this one or maybe two instances throughout the year. World Championships and maybe, let's say, the finals in Rome or whatever it was last year, right? But that means the rest of the year we're going to be at some version of ourselves that is maybe less than 100%. And how do we deal with that? And, we have to sort of accept that and embrace it and go into tournaments figuring out ways to win when maybe we're a little banged up from the travel and I don't know, the long nature of the season, especially for Americans and Brazilians and Australians that are, not headquartered in Europe. You know what I mean?
Sure. How do you think that compares with the indoor, mentally, you mentioned it, but is there one side, do you think, that maybe burns out quicker, or one version of the sport that burns out quicker than the other? Have you ever experienced that as a player, burnout, or within the beach game of just the season being too long? Or actually is it quite easy to stay motivated when you go from playing big games at club level, big games at international level for indoor volleyball as well?
Well, yeah, I don't. There's most certainly burnout on both sides. Indoor, the fact that you basically never have an off season if you're playing professionally leads to a huge amount of burnout. Now, the coping mechanism there, I think, is that there's, if we're talking about the national team, there's 20 other guys that can sort of alleviate your day-to-day stress, whether it's in practice or whatever. It becomes easier to go. Let's use Matt Anderson as an example, because he's a guy that professionally obviously is getting the mother load of the sets for his team, and then he comes to the U.S. and that continues. So I mean, the workload on him is tremendous, nonstop. Okay, but we can, maybe bring him in and go, okay, you just had a tough season. Let's get a good hour of work in today, and then, let's go take care of your body. On the beach, if I go, Jake, let's get 45 minutes of work in today, and then you go take care of your body, that means practice is over because there's not 20 other guys waiting to sub in, right? And so the management tactics, I think, become a little bit different. But, burnout is real. Seems like a T-shirt we should make and market, right? Burnout is real, man. It's just kind of the mechanisms to cope with it, I think, are just a little bit different. We try and schedule time off and so forth. I mean, we're also training not quite as much as indoor teams. We're training 4 days a week on the sand. At least my guys are. And trying to get after it pretty good all 4 of those days. And that seems like a light load if you're an indoor player and you go, wait, we have practice 6 days a week. But it's 2 guys getting, every single rep for 2 hours as opposed to, being one of 6 on the court or one of, 20 to 25 guys in a gym for 2.5 hours. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I haven't thought of it personally from that perspective before. So really, yeah. Next question. I mean, winning a gold medal in 2008 is like boyhood dream stuff. Like, it's an incredible achievement. Just really would like to touch on what was it like working underneath Hugh McCutcheon through that time. Stanley's probably quite a wise man, and I've done some reading in the past about how about culture, environment, the words that he was using about taking steps forward every day. Is that something that he obviously used? How was it working for him? And is there anything in particular that you take from winning that gold medal, working underneath Hugh McCutcheon, that you use on a daily basis?
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like anything I've ever said, particularly in a coaching uh, environment, is just direct theft from something I was told by Hugh at some point.
We won't make a T-shirt about that.
Yeah, yeah. It's I probably owe him, royalties or something. But yeah, he is one of my all-time favorite just human beings, and certainly the best coach that I know of. And I was actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but I played for him for at least 10 years, if not more, because I went to university at BYU, where he was Carl McGowan's assistant coach the years I was there. And then when I first joined the national team, I think there was, I don't know, 6 months or a year. And then he was hired as Doug Beal's assistant coach. So I played with him from 2002 to 2004. And then obviously in '05, he took over the team as the head coach. And my first years professionally overseas in Vienna, he was our head coach as well. So I got a heavy dose of Hugh, and couldn't be happier about that, because I don't know, it was really a fascinating thing to me to first join the U.S. team and play with, a bunch of guys from across the country that, were competitors while we were all in college. And I just, in my mind, I thought, the experience I had at BYU was just what the college experience was. That was how you learned the game at the collegiate level and so forth. But you come to find out that that's not exactly true. Obviously everyone's experience differs, and the level of coaching that you get varies greatly. And I was very, very fortunate to have guys like McGowan. Hugh McCutcheon was our assistant. Our second assistant was Troy Tanner, if you know that name. He was a great beach volleyball player himself, two-time gold medalist, and I'm sorry, he was a one-time gold medalist, a two-time national champion in college, though. So I mean, that was kind of the background. I was fortunate enough to come up through, and so that shapes the way I think about the game, and like I said, just about anything I ever say from a coaching standpoint every day.
Is there anything in particular that shines about him as a person, the way that he was as a coach, or the way that he obviously still is? He's definitely still coaching and doing a great job. Is there anything you can remember in particular that you'd like to share?
I really resonated well, or it resonated with me, that just his calm demeanor. He wasn't like a Bernardinho who's living and dying by every single point on the sideline.
That is very similar.
Yeah. It would be interesting to now with all these devices we wear on ourselves to counter steps and counter jumps and all that stuff. It'd be interesting to see who's expending more calories, Bernardinho or any player on the court. But yeah, I just really appreciated Hugh's intellectual approach to the game. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love everything about the guy. It's hard to really put into words, I mean, from his vocabulary, which I respect, to the sense of humor, to I don't know, the ability to deal with different personalities and different temperaments. His ability to draw up a plan create a plan and then stick to it in the face of some adversity was really the kind of great untold story of our 2008 success, I think. You tend to see a successful result and think that everything was rainbows and ponies, which is another Hugh expression, along the way, right? Winning cures all ills, and all these expressions we have. When you look back at things after being successful in any given arena, you sort of sugarcoat some of the bumps and bruises that happen along the way, right? And so in 2005, we sat in a room as a team in Anaheim, California, where we were considering moving, and drew up a mission statement. Hugh's got an MBA, so he's very business-minded and very methodical and so forth. We dropped this mission statement, and he insists that the first statement in the mission statement is, or the first sentence I should say is, we will win a gold medal in 2008 at the Beijing Olympic Games, which, I mean, was all but high comedy to our squad at that point, right? We'd never done anything in the World League, not to mention at an Olympic Games. And so it was very presumptuous at best, let's say. But obviously, a group of athletes is not going to, they're not going to hope for less than the top spot, right? And he knew that was what needed to be there. So we go through 2005, have a decent, especially for the group we had at the time, we had a pretty solid summer. We did so in the World League, I think, and we ended up actually beating the full Brazilian team that had won the gold medal the year before. We had this America's Cup, it was called, competition in Brazil. Giba, Dante, all those guys, and we had kind of like a Bad News Bears ragtag crew of guys. But anyways, I only bring that up to say that we had a little bit of success that first year, and so things look like they're going well. But then 2006 was a completely different story. For whatever reason, the sophomore slump, whatever you want to call it, we don't have a good World League. At World Championships, we get 10th place or something, which is sort of catastrophic considering, what the level of our team technically was. And I mean, people on our team are like calling for Hugh's head. Realistically, it was his first head coaching job, was being the head coach of the national team, which is a tribute to how much people thought of his ability, and rightfully so. But, at the first sign of things not going well, that comes back to bite you a little bit. People can say, this guy is, how's this guy leading our team? He doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. But in the face of that adversity, he knew that the things he was doing were the right things. And he was playing the long game, right, and rightfully so, right? And so by 2007, things started to turn around a little bit. We ended up getting a bronze in the World League, came very close to qualifying at the World Cup. And then 2008 was 2008, and that was good. But it wasn't, just this 4-year smooth sailing win fest. We just, we did a lot of the right things along the way, but there were plenty of the wrong things as well. And his ability to have that plan in place and stick to it was the constant that I think allowed us to sort of wring every ounce of ability and success that we could out of our particular group.
Is there anything like you'd find books and it would be gold medal mentality or the secrets to success, or is there anything in that? I sort of understand that being coach, it's so many little things that make this big thing happen, that obviously you might not be able to recall, but is there anything in there that stands out for you about what was special about that 2008 team, that maybe you take into your coaching now and you drive as part of trying to drive your team forward?
Yeah, it's I mean, this is where the disciplines differ a lot. I think in that, I think one of the great things that Hugh did was figure out what the best version of our group of athletes was. And our particular team in '08, I think what we did best was fulfill our individual roles within that team. There's that expression that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts and so forth. And I think that was certainly true with our group, because if you look individually, I never was anywhere near the player that Sergio from Brazil is as a libero. Setting wise and maybe opposite wise, we had the upper hand over Brazil, but our outsides, Giba and Dante, even with Reed Pretty and Riley Salmon, two of my favorite guys, it's hard to argue that individually our guys were better than their guys, right? But together as a unit, we were able to kind of get more as a group than that particular team was, I think. And that was a lot of Hugh's doing, putting those roles in place, clearly defining those roles for each of us. And then, a lot of credit goes to my teammates for fulfilling, embracing those roles and fulfilling that. Again, on the beach, that's tough because there's just the two of you, but I guess maybe the through line would be you've got to sort of pick partners with whom you work well. It's tougher, I think, in a lot of the other countries. We have a little bit more choice, I feel like. In the United States, there's more beach volleyball players.
It also could be a weakness in times, because I spent two winters in LA a while ago coaching, and there was a merry-go-round of beach volleyball partnerships. Like it can potentially be fairly, I don't know the right word, flaky at times.
I think, we could get into a lot of my thoughts here. I'll try and keep it as PC as I can. I think realistically, most people, and again, to go back to Hugh knew what we needed to do to be successful, and then was able to kind of keep us on that path, despite adversity. I think, to your point, people are very frivolous in their decision-making in the beach volleyball world, and, have this grass is greener on the other side kind of mentality. And at the first hint of anything less than they want, they jump ship, right? And so I think that's because most people don't know what it takes to be successful. I think most people don't have any idea about the concept of building a team, being in something for the long haul. When it's your profession and you've got to win in order to get paid and so forth, I get that decision-making process. I can't afford really to sit and wallow in mediocrity for too long, just hoping that things are going to turn around, right?
Like process versus outcome orientation, and all of that.
Yeah, but I think that's something that I give my guy Jake so much credit for, and obviously, he's in a good situation because he's been such a top player for such a long time that he's had his pick of other good partners, but he also does a tremendous job of figuring out what is best for him, what he's looking for in not only a partner, but in a coach, in any of the kind of team surrounding him, and does the homework up front, makes a decision, and then now that's my team. And if we hit a bump in the road, we figure out how do we fix things? How do we get back to what's going to help us win, not scrap everything and try and find somebody else who it's going to be smooth sailing with nonstop, which, obviously that person doesn't exist.
No, there's no such thing. Is that what Hugh did very, very well? Like he knew the end game, and he knew how to keep you accountable for everything to get there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it helped establish a culture, which certainly was a little bit lost on our same group of athletes. Our 4 years leading up to London, for example. Um, a team culture has to be established from the top down, I think, and accountability is a great word. I'm glad you used that, because he held us accountable, certainly, but then the best accountability is when your peers, your teammates, hold you accountable, right? Because otherwise, you get this. I don't know. If only the coach is holding you accountable to stuff, I feel like you start to view them as some sort of disciplinarian, and you start to collude with your other teammates to avoid discipline from this authority figure, rather than knowing you've got to bring it on every play because this guy over here and that guy over there and that guy over there is going to hold you accountable if you don't, and vice versa. Tyler Hildebrand. I'll give you a quick story of accountability from my indoor days.
So for anyone watching, Tyler was there. I don't know what his title was for USAB.
Neither do I.
Okay, I'm glad, but something to do with performance and working with the coaches. Is that correct? And now he's gone to Nebraska.
Yeah, he was. I think his title was director of coaching, but basically he was our head coach for the U.S. program, and he's, besides Hugh, my other sort of coaching mentor, somebody who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and is an incredible volleyball mind. So he was a setter, and he's about 10 years younger than I am, and so he was new into the gym, the USA gym, and we're in this drill. He and I are on the same team, and he keeps firing in quick sets from 12, 15 feet off the net, to not great success, and we're losing this drill, and I'm losing my mind because we're losing this drill, right? And I don't know what the cursing policy is on this.
We're setting a precedent. This is the first one we've ever done.
Okay. Oh, okay, good. So yeah, let's set the bar low then. I'm like, stop setting the middle, right? And so whatever, he kind of doesn't respond to me because he's a young guy and I'm an older guy, and whatever. It's a weird dynamic. But the drill ends, whatever the result, we probably lost, and we're going to shag balls, and he approaches me and says, "Hey, listen, like, would you want me to yell at you?" Because I think throughout that drill I'd maybe overpassed one or two of the free balls, trying to throw it. He goes, "You want me to yell at you for overpassing a free ball?" And I said, "I absolutely do. And you absolutely should." And it was this great moment for the two of us because, first of all, he explained that he was being told to do that by the coaching staff, which I didn't know. And so that completely softened my opinion. He was just doing his deal, what he should have been doing. And it kind of opened his eyes to my perspective, in that I want that accountability, and I sort of demand that. I'm not some tyrant old guy just yelling at young guys because they're younger than me. I want us to all be operating at our best, and that's a two-way street, and has to be a two-way street.
Is it the same with the beach guys now? Is it the same with Taylor and Jake? Is there a high level of accountability with stuff?
I think it's a little bit more organic. I think for them, they both hold themselves very accountable to things. I really, kind of going back to how Hugh established roles, and the group I was with really embraced those roles. I think the way that works on the beach is, how does that concept of accountability work with your particular pair? You know what I mean? Like, my guys aren't yelling and screaming at each other ever. It's more quiet conversation. Just their general demeanor and the way in which they communicate is fantastic, in my opinion, and very productive. You see a lot of partnerships where a guy misses a dig and you see the blocker kind of throw his hands up in disgust, and you can get some of these sort of toxic reactions that I think aren't very productive. And I'm very, very pleased by the way my guys don't do things like that.
Do you think because there's a higher level of problem solving and decision making in beach volleyball due to the nature of the sport compared to indoor? Obviously, there is always problem solving and decision making, but do you think it's intensified in beach volleyball over indoor?
Oh, without a doubt. And that's I don't know, that probably goes into kind of the way I, coach my guys, because there's no one answer to any given problem, really, right? So we sort of have that mentality. Hey, we can score in any number of different ways, but in order for us to score, we need to be on the same page. And so that's really the critical part of that equation, is just being on the same page as one another. Whereas indoor, I like the way I explain it is like, hey, if we close the line on the block, the line is closed. People aren't roll shotting down the line over a line block, right? So there are some absolutes, I think, in indoor, if we can get there, that we work around. And on the beach, that's not the case. So really the critical element is just that we're both operating in the same direction.
Well, while we're on that, obviously, like a big part of coaching is reading the game. Something that your guys do very well, something the Norwegians do incredibly well, Anders blocking wise. How would you feel that differs between indoor and beach as well? To read the game, how do you coach it? Like, how do you between the two different sports?
The way I think about it, I guess, is you need a library of experience, because how I think about reading is it's basically like upgrading my processor, right? I've got an Intel 5 chip. When I step on the beach and I need to get that Intel 7 or Intel 9, whatever processor, right? So the same information is coming at me, but I can just process it a little more quickly and get into action a little bit more quickly in response, right? So it's experience is a thing. And then, I guess the only way I can really help as a coach is trying to identify some cues that we can look at, that we can see maybe in a hitter or in a blocker or something that maybe helps us identify and hopefully, as we see it more and more, process more quickly. Because really, like, I don't know, again, in conversation with Tyler, talking about reaction time, if you read the game particularly well, it looks like you're already in a spot before the ball is hit or whatever, right? So there's this idea that you and I essentially have exactly the same reaction time. The difference is negligible. But if I have a little bit more experience at playing defense, let's say, than you do, it's going to appear as though I react more quickly than you at times. But that's just because I've sort of taken in a little bit more information, and I've actually probably waited longer to make my move than you have.
I guess that could be on the arm swing, it could be on the approach line, it could be on all of these things that make a difference to each player as well.
Yeah, so my actual reaction, my physical reaction, is the same speed as yours, but my experience allows me to be patient and take in and process more information before so I'm essentially, my reaction is just more educated,
yeah, for sure,
so to speak, than yours is. And so how do you coach that? That's a tough one, right? You just are essentially trying to maybe increase learning speed by helping your player look at the right things. But ultimately, that experience has to take hold in their mind and register physically through experience, I think.
Yeah, I like it. And that's why we still see players playing into their 40s and making great results, because there's a big concoction of things that leads to that experience. And Jake being one of them, Hayden another one, Emmanuel another one, who all played to into their 40s and were successful. Just quickly, how did it come around? Quickly, it's one of the questions that was at the start, but I forgot. How did it come around? You guys working together? What was that process like? And were you tempted to coach indoor?
No, I haven't been tempted to coach indoor, in that I have, like some offer that I let go by the wayside. But yeah, I started working on the beach because when I was done playing, Tyler was coaching Jake and Casey Patterson at the time, and had an opportunity where I could kind of slide in and learn. He was also coaching a women's team then. So our system in the U.S. was such that I could travel with them, and we could sort of work together, which was great for me because I could learn the beach game. I could be around friends of mine, because I've known Jake for 20 years at this point. He's a Utah guy, and I went to school in Utah. Casey Patterson went to the same university I did, albeit at a different time. But so I've known those guys forever. So it's fun to be around them. We're at the beach. I'm learning the beach game, and it was awesome. And one of the things that I like about the beach, as far as coaching goes, is I don't have my own resume on the beach. I think one of the difficulties players have, if you played at a decent level, when you transition into being a coach, sometimes it's difficult because you're constantly superimposing your own career, or however it existed in your mind, onto what you're seeing from your players. And that can be difficult to separate out at times. Oh, I would have done this, or why didn't you make this play? I always made that play, or, some of the revisionist history we like to engage in when it pertains to ourselves. Yeah. But on the beach, I don't have any of that. I'm never at any point thinking I would have done that better than player X, because you know what, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have even been allowed in this tournament. Let's be honest. And so that was an element of coaching on the beach that made that transition from being a player into being a coach a lot more smooth for me.
Would you ever go indoors?
Yeah, for sure. If the opportunity was right, like Tyler got the opportunity of opportunities going back to Nebraska. And so, I know he's incredibly passionate about the beach game, and we were very fortunate to bask in that passion for quite a few years. But, for his family and for his future and so forth, the situation was just too good indoors. And if something along those lines presented itself to me, I would have to be silly to not at least consider that as well.
So it's really interesting, because to a lot of coaches, having that role with USA driving forwards is the dream job. But then obviously there's college, there's the security that comes with it. There's obviously it's such a big beast, college volleyball, that we all sort of understand, but I imagine we don't quite fully get it.
Yeah, it's a unique system we have over here, and particularly in women's collegiate volleyball, there's so much money because so many schools have programs and so forth, and he's at maybe the top program in the whole country at Nebraska. So just the money you can earn as a coach, and kind of the support you have, the facilities they have there are unbelievable. They've got essentially a professional stadium that's built specifically for volleyball. It's got luxury boxes and concession stands, and everything you see in a professional sporting arena. And it's 8 or 10,000 seats that are full every single night. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, he also gets to work with the same players day in, day out for a long period of time, which is quite appealing for a coach. Well, just quickly, what would you say would be the different tasks? I mean, running an indoor program, you said it on here just moments ago, like you have to deal with 2 players in an indoor program. Sorry, I didn't mean to give you the V through the through the webcam. But in terms of running an indoor program, you've got a lot of jobs. Can you sort of talk us through what the different tasks would be between coaching indoor and beach?
I mean, there are so many different plates in the air, indoor wise.
I get the chance. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, one of the major ones you mentioned, aside from all the technical stuff, is the fact that you've got 6 players that aren't on the floor that are looking to get playing time. So just the dynamics of dealing with people's emotions and egos on that front is already, quite daunting, I would think. To the point where that's something I've seen advertised in our country here as a lure to get kids to come play on the beach. They say there's no bench in beach, meaning if you come play, you're going to play. You're not going to be on the team and ride the pine the whole time.
But do you feel there's more sort of big egos in indoor volleyball or in beach volleyball? Sorry. I certainly feel that in the beach volleyball community I don't feel any really.
You don't feel that there's any ego?
Not any big egos, no.
Yeah, not to the point that they're standoffish, but I think, I think that's why I bring up the camaraderie part, though. It helps keep those egos in check a little bit, because the way the indoor set up is, first of all, it's there's no co-ed tournaments, so it's just you and 11 other guys from your country that just move as a unit, right? And so there's very little intermingling. There's more nowadays, I think, because guys play internationally and are friends and teammates professionally with some of these guys from other countries. But I think that fuels, if I have a big ego, I'm the big dog on my team, and then it's us against you. So, I have my chest out all the time, and maybe that ego gets inflated a little bit. Whereas the direct opposite is happening on the beach, I think. Because we're all sitting down at the breakfast together or whatever, and I don't know. I look like a major asshole if I'm just walking around with my chest out all the time, and because especially if I don't win every week, the fact that we have so many tournaments, I think also helps to keep that in check a little bit on the beach.
I agree completely. And then for autonomy, do you feel it's beach volleyballers are more autonomous with themselves?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's one of the things, I'll give you the way it operates in the U.S. When I played on the national team, I never once thought about a plane ticket or anything. I just showed up to the bus when it was time to leave and all that stuff. Never thought about a hotel, none of that. But the way our system works is USA Volleyball supports our travel, but it's kind of in reimbursement form. So we book our own travel. Obviously, the players have the hotel and so forth covered, but it's complete autonomy in that sense. We can stay with a particular, Star Alliance or American Airlines, or whatever you want to fly, but it's up to you to take care of that and so forth. And so it's the height of autonomy. And indoor, at least for us, there was zero autonomy.
And you're a product of your environment, and for beach volleyball, the environment is definitely pushing you to be autonomous. I agree. Individual coaching appears easier and more suitable in indoor volleyball. Number of players to a coach, obviously, as we've already spoke on in that longer off season that you mentioned. if possible, budget-wise, would it make sense to create the same possibilities for coaching like that indoors? Or is it so different that it has that tactical focus to say, hey, well, I need someone to come in and pass the ball in system, and I need to run a quick ball and use the middle blocker, or however you obviously run your system. But would there be place for that individual sort of improvement and development?
Indoor?
Could you get the same level of progress?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way indoor programs run, at least the ones I've been involved in, there's a pretty deep staff usually. And so the head coach is almost a manager of sorts. And then, the assistant, one guy will be kind of in charge of, I don't know, the block and defense schemes. One guy will be in charge of maybe the setting and more of the offensive stuff. And so, although it's not individual coaches, they do have their specific focuses as coaches. And so, yeah, I think it functions. If anything, on the beach, we're almost trying to emulate the indoor system.
Interesting.
Where, yeah, there's maybe I work with my guys individually, but there's kind of a head coach guiding us, and there's a little bit more organizational involvement. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're so different. I think the way the coaching is now is pretty good. As far as, I just have my two guys, and indoor you got a head coach and three assistants maybe that work with the 20 guys on the national team. Like, I think that it's hard to imagine how that could be improved too greatly.
Yeah.
But who knows? I'm always open to ideas. Obviously, it's like you said, it's financially dependent.
Yeah, and some big budgets. If you had the unlimited budget, as a coach, you generally work with a player like in developing certain techniques or sort of strategies into an older age in beach volleyballs and in indoor. We touched on that. How do you does Jake need something different to tailor, or do they both need the same, or how would you describe how does your relationship differ with the guys a little bit?
Again, I view my role as more of like a fine tuning thing, more so than trying to do all this skill acquisition, because I think both my guys are very, very skilled. Obviously, it's just finding maybe a percentage point here and there that we can upgrade. And again, it's with our particular group, it's very collaborative. I rely heavily on their knowledge and their wealth of experience when it comes to on the court stuff. And like I mentioned early on, I kind of focus more on sort of game management and just reminding us of stuff along the way. Yeah, it's interesting because on the FIVB, obviously, to go back to your point about autonomy, coaches are completely disallowed from being involved during matches. And so one of the interesting sort of dualities we face is on the AVP, I can sit in the box with them. They even opened up the rules this year during that 3-week series we had, where I was allowed to talk to them from whistle to whistle, right? So as soon as the play ended, I could be up and talking to them until the whistle blew again to serve.
I saw it, but how pretty good? Or do you find it to be helpful, or do you actually think it stops if the bigger picture is winning an Olympic medal? Does it stop the progress towards that autonomy, or what's the relationship there, and how do you feel about it?
I'll tell you, I think in the 3 tournaments, I maybe said one sentence to my guys during that allotted time, because that's not the construct that we've established for our particular team. My guys aren't looking for me to yap from the sideline, and I don't, play to play, I don't have anything to say anyways, that's of any value. It's just a distraction, if anything. Um, and so, and then B, like you said, I mean, if we're aiming towards the Olympics and a decent percentage of our tournament play is international, we don't want to be in the habit of looking to me for any information during games,
You can't
right?
solve.
And yeah, because we can't do that internationally. So if we, one of the things in sports in general, but certainly in volleyball, is kind of creating these routines for yourself. And if your routine is that you make a play and then you look to your coach for some sort of feedback, and then all of a sudden that's not there, that's going to throw you out of whack when it's important. And so even with the ability for us to converse during timeouts and so forth, we like to have them sort of lead those conversations, sort of take charge of those. And if I have anything to add, I add it, but we much prefer that they're just conversing with one another and sort of trying to crack the code of what's going on themselves, make adjustments if needs be, and so forth, because that's what has to happen on the world tour.
You said
they've got to.
You're not the guy driving the Ferrari, right? You're the passenger.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah, grudgingly at that.
Yeah, uncomfortably. This has been, yeah, it's been awesome. It's gone on for longer than we thought, but we're gonna keep. I've got a couple more for you if you don't mind. Tactical wise, beach volleyball. We touched on it very very quickly. I look at both games as a game of angles, as we spoke about, speeds, distances, times, arm swings. Are there any similarities in which you would set a beach team up, potentially how you've played indoor, i.e. if you're serving the front court receiver and you serve, indoor and you serve them inside to maybe take them out the offense, or if you serve the left side or inside for similar reasons to get them approaching on a certain way at the net? Is there anything that you see as being similar? Because I see that as a main similarity.
Yeah, I mean, there are some slight similarities, I suppose. That is one of the things we think about, trying to, ascertain if a guy is a little more comfortable attacking from, more towards the middle of the court versus out towards the pin. And if, I don't know, either of those is a weakness, can we kind of serve him in that direction to sort of get that end result that we want? But more so, I think the greatest similarity is in sort of this underlying concept that we're trying to get the other team out of system as much as possible. Anymore, certainly indoors and more and more on the beach, if a team's in system, the chances of stopping them in their side out game is becoming less and less, right?
Too good a vision and too many angles.
Yeah. Too good a vision, and physicality is becoming greater and greater and so forth. So, and also there's only two people trying to stop these monsters instead of six, right? So, I kind of one of the ways I think about it, not only for what we're trying to inflict on the other team, but for what we're trying to stop from being inflicted upon us, is like this snowball concept, right? If I can pass the ball well, the likelihood of getting a good set goes up, and if I can set the ball well, the likelihood of attacking the ball where I want goes up. So things snowball in my favor that way. But obviously, the reverse of that is true as well. Like, the poorer my pass, the lower the likelihood of getting a good set, and the lower the likelihood of getting a good attack. And so that's kind of the concept we go into our block and defense with, is we're trying to start a negative snowball effect for the other side, for lack of a better way of thinking about it, right?
I call it the domino effect.
Yeah.
And similar, not quite the same, but very, very similar.
Well, I would say it's exactly the same, and I would call it unusual that someone who lives in Southern California thinks of anything snow related. But
yeah, you got it good there. Right. Rich, thank you so much for coming on. It's been yeah, personally, it's been awesome to have your insight and to listen to some of your experiences. And I think for the community and for other beach volleyball coaches around the world, I think the depth that you've gone into will be really appreciated, and the openness that you've had and you've showed as well. So yeah, thank you very much from everybody who'll be watching, and good luck. I hope I see you soon, sooner rather than later, and I hope that we're back to some sort of normality, and for you guys on your pursuit of the Olympics and hopefully getting a medal. Good luck for everything, and yeah, all the best. Yeah, thank you to the International Beach Volleyball Coaches Association for the opportunity to obviously hold these chats. We hope you enjoyed. We hope there's more coming soon, and also we hope there's tournaments coming our way as well. But thank you very much for tuning in.